Welcome to Peds Doc Talk TV. I am Dr. Mona Amin, a board-certified pediatrician and mom, and on this video I'm talking all about food allergies. May 9th through the 15th is Food Allergy Awareness Week, and I want to educate you all about food allergies and on ways to reduce our children's risk of getting a food allergy. I am teaming up with Lil Mixins. This is a brand that we use to introduce allergenic foods from an early age to our son Ryan. And at the end of the video, I'm going to be going over little recipes on how to use their product and how you can introduce allergenic foods to your child's diet and when to do so. Before we continue, make sure you hit that subscribe button below this video because that's how you stay up to date on all of my content here on Peds Doc Talk TV. Follow me at Peds Doc Talk on Instagram, and here we go. On this video, we're going to be going over statistics about food allergies, the 9 most common food allergies that we see in the United States, background on food allergies, what a food allergy may look like, and why early introduction of these foods are important. I won't be talking about the management of a child with a known food allergy, but if you have a concern that your child has a food allergy after watching this video, please make sure to talk to your child's clinician for further guidance. In the United States, about 32 million adults and 5.6 million children live with a life-threatening food allergy. 1 in 13 children have a food allergy, so even if your own child doesn't have a food allergy, it's really important that we spread awareness about this because a child with food allergies is likely going to be in your child's class, maybe your child's neighbor, and so it's important that we understand this when we're hosting parties, when we're sending food to our child's daycare or school. About 40% of children with a food allergy also are allergic to other foods as well. And we have seen food allergy treatment on the rise. From 2007 to 2016, we have seen a 377% increase in the treatment for life-threatening anaphylactic food allergies. So there are more than 170 foods that have been reported to cause food allergies. The 9 most common foods that can cause an allergy are milk, egg, peanut, soy, wheat, treenut, shellfish, fish, and most recently, sesame was added as a top 9 food allergy. Most common in children are peanut, milk, shellfish, and treenut. Allergies to milk, egg, wheat, and soy are likely to be outgrown. Usually children do see this outgrown by the age of 5. Yes, there are some cases that they'll last a little bit longer, but allergies to peanuts, treenuts, and shellfish are usually lifelong. A food allergy is a reaction to a food that triggers an immune response. Before having a food allergy reaction, the child may have been exposed to that food once or twice before, or may have even been sensitized to it from breast milk. So it's not always the first time you give your child the food that you'll see an allergic reaction. At the time of an allergic reaction, the body releases IgE antibodies, which stimulate the release of histamines. And the histamine release is what causes those telltale symptoms of a full body rash, hives, and in very severe cases, difficulty breathing, facial swelling that you may see in allergic reactions. Parents will commonly say, well, my child has an intolerance to dairy or an intolerance to gluten, so that is an allergy. Food allergies and food intolerances are very different. A food allergy is a life-threatening situation, whereas a food intolerance is usually something that will cause discomfort in that person. So maybe some bloating, some diarrhea, but it won't lead to a life-threatening issue. An example of this would be a lactose intolerance. So the person is intolerant to the sugar in milk. This is something that develops later in life. It's not something we commonly or really ever see in the newborn period. On the flip side, we have a milk protein allergy, which is something that in the newborn period can present as blood in the stool, mucus and blood in the stool, poor weight gain, really bad reflux, and this is an actual allergy to milk and the milk protein. These are 2 very different things. In some cases, a milk protein allergy can cause a lot of problems for that newborn baby. They can have weight loss, they can have severe blood loss if they have bleeding in the stool. So it's really important that we remember the differences. One can be actually threatening and the other one can just lead to discomfort. Both are important, but the differentiation is vital to understand. What does a food allergy look like? Well, the reaction is going to happen within minutes or within an hour of ingesting the food of concern. Symptoms of an allergic reaction can vary from very mild, like an itchy mouth, some hives, to very severe, like difficulty breathing or throat tightening. I wanted to go over a graphic from the Food Allergy Research Education website that goes over the signs of a food allergy. So this graphic is meant for someone with a known food allergy, but I do think it's extremely valuable. So let's discuss peanuts. Your child eats peanuts and they develop any one of the mild symptoms. So they have an itchy or runny nose and sneezing, an itchy mouth, few hives, mild itch, or mild nausea or discomfort within an hour of eating that food. So if they have one of those, it's nice to talk to your child's clinician's office. So you can call the nursing line or speak to the pediatrician and discuss what needs to be monitored. They may ask you to give Benadryl. If your child has a mild symptom but is having two or more of these mild symptoms, it's important to have the child be seen to make sure, is this something that warrants more than just Benadryl? So you can see in the chart for mild symptoms from more than one system area, give epinephrine. This is something that we don't expect you to give at home if this is a first time incident. But if your child has more than one of the mild symptoms, it's important to have them be seen to determine, is this a food allergy? Should we avoid this food or should we monitor the situation? If at any point your child has any worsening symptoms going into the severe category, the child needs an emergency evaluation. For the severe symptoms on the left-hand side, for any of these, this is a sign of a severe allergic reaction. So just say your child eats peanuts and has a few hives. So going to the mild symptoms, a few hives. Speak to the nursing line to see what the next step is. Just say they eat peanuts and they have a few hives and an itchy mouth. I would recommend having that child be seen either at your child's clinician's office or at the ER. Now, if your child eats peanuts and develops a full body rash, and that's going to be on that left-hand side, the skin, many hives over the body, widespread redness, that is considered a severe symptom after a food ingestion. It is important that you get that child evaluated in a clinical setting. They will want to know the history, what food was given. They'll probably have you avoid that food until further testing can be done. I think that image is very important. It's an action plan for a family with a known food allergy, but it really can help if it's a new food that you're introducing and you're wanting to monitor for a concern for food allergies to know what symptoms to look out for. The bottom line is that if you are concerned, within an hour your child ate a food and you're not sure, I would speak to your child's clinician. Remember, you can do a telemedicine visit, you can call the nursing line, or if they're open, you can be seen. But remember, if your child is exhibiting any of the severe symptoms, they should be seen right away. I would not go by just calling. I would not just give them Benadryl and not tell us. It's really important that we know the story of what happened so that we can say, hey, I need you to hold on this food until you see an allergist. Personally, I'm really big on those mild symptoms. Sometimes we think that, oh, it's nothing, but if you are concerned and you are repetitively seeing your child eat a certain food and having these mild symptoms every time they eat the food, it is an important discussion to have with your child's pediatrician because they will guide you and they will say, hey, at this point, I think it's best that we do see an allergist because you're having repetitive concern for a mild allergy. Even though it's mild, we don't want it to turn into a severe situation. So why do we think we're seeing a higher incidence of food allergies? One of the big ones is I do believe that the medical community did a big disservice for a long time telling people to delay the introduction of allergenic foods until 1. When I was doing research for this video, I even saw some pediatrician websites that still have it on their website that delay the introduction of peanuts until 1 year of age. They haven't updated their website to reflect the new recommendations. So for a long time, families were waiting to give allergenic foods. The thought process back then was, oh, this is allergenic. If you give it early, your body's going to create a response and then you're going to have a food allergy. But we understand more that no, if you delay it, your body is more likely to look at it as foreign. So early introduction is better. Early introduction is what we are recommending. And if you are hearing anyone say to delay the introduction of an allergenic food that is someone who's not your allergist, please, please, please direct them to this video or direct them to all of the other information out there regarding the importance of early introduction. There was a big study in 2015 called the LEAP trial, Learning Early About Peanut. They looked at the importance of early introduction of peanut protein and how the early introduction of peanut protein can prevent allergies by 80%. They looked at children who were considered high risk for food allergies, which were children with severe eczema and or an egg allergy. They were randomly divided into 2 groups. In one group, the children were receiving peanut protein on a regular, consistent basis, and in the other group, the children were not receiving any peanut protein at all. The children in the peanut protein group were given 6 grams of peanut protein divided into 3 doses throughout the week in a formulation that was safe for babies. So if it was a 4-month-old or a 5-month-old, it was ground peanut protein mixed into a puree. If it was an older child, then they could get more smears of peanut butter or items mixed into something if they were doing baby-led weaning or self-feeding. The children that were in the peanut protein group had the 6 grams of protein a week until they were age 5. When comparing both of the groups, the children who were in the peanut protein group had about an 82% chance of not having a peanut allergy by the age of 60 months or 5 years. So the study that I linked below, again, this is the LEAP trial. I have a lot of resources for you all, really goes to show that the early introduction of peanut protein was really important in children that were high risk. So what this study shows us is that the early introduction of peanut protein is really important. And it's not just about introducing it and not introducing it again. It's the repetitive introduction. So in this study, the child had 3 doses of peanut protein in the week, averaging out to 6 grams of protein a week. But the reality is, I don't need you to sit there and calculate the amount of grams that you're getting. I just want it to be a consistent introduction, that you are alternating those allergenic foods for your child from a young age. So the study looked only at children who are considered high risk, but can we say that this is important for all children? Yes, because it's not going to harm other children to receive the same advice. This advice is really important for children who are high risk for food allergies, and this means children with eczema. The data is showing that severe eczema or moderate eczema is more high risk, but if your child has any eczema, I advise speaking to your child's clinician about the early introduction of allergenic foods from the age of 4 months and beyond. There's a lot of debate as to why pediatricians are saying, hey, you can introduce food as early as 4 months, when other nutritionists and other accounts on social media may say, hey, we wait till 6 months. It has a lot to do with the early introduction of allergenic foods. If your baby is showing interest in puree and you're able to mix allergenic foods into that here and there, you can start to do that after the age of 4 months. If your child is high risk, meaning has an egg allergy or a moderate or severe eczema, speak to your child's clinician because this is likely going to be recommended, minus possibly the egg because they have a known egg allergy. But if your child has no allergies, there's no family history, there's no eczema, you can still do early introduction because we do see children without any risk factors develop allergies. So when your child's pediatrician talks to you about the possibility of introducing purees or baby food after the 4-month visit, make sure you understand where they're coming from because a lot of it has to do with the research we know about early introduction of allergenic foods. Your child is still going to be primarily getting formula or breastfeeding, but especially for those high-risk individuals, the early introduction is going to become very important. And even if your child is not high risk, it's something to consider. So if your child is not high risk for food allergies and you want to wait until they're doing baby-led weaning, for example, that is fine. But remember that for children who are high risk for food allergies and the general population, we do recommend the start of these allergenic foods after the age of 4 months if they're showing signs of readiness for purees. If you want to stick to baby-led weaning and your child is not high risk for food allergies, you can do so, but please make sure you introduce these allergenic foods from the time that you start solids. And the goal here, like I mentioned earlier, is not you do it once and you forget about it. It's not teeny tiny taste, it's actual exposure so that their body can build tolerance to it and not create an allergy to it. Because remember, what we're trying to do is teach the body that this is normal, this is what you're getting, this is what you're eating, so it doesn't create an immune response. So when you think about it, the old advice of waiting until 1 really makes no sense, right? If we're waiting till 1, the body is not being exposed to any of these foods, which can be concerning if they're at risk for food allergies. So the early introduction is important. I did want to give you all some tips on how you can introduce these allergenic foods from an early age. And remember, this can happen anytime after the 4-month mark. Remember that if your child is not sitting independently yet, you're not going to really be doing baby-led weaning, but you can start to mix any of these powders into a puree. Now I'm going to go over how you can use products like this, the Lil Mixins powders. It comes in egg, peanut, as well as treenut, how you can use this in your child's foods, purees with baby-led weaning to introduce the proteins of these allergenic foods from an early age. Now, we started solids after about 4.5 months. Ryaan was showing signs of readiness in terms of spoon feeding. We didn't do baby-led weaning or self-feeding until about 6.5 months. But I chose to do the 4.5 to 6.5 months of puree because I wanted to introduce these allergenic foods and he was showing signs of readiness. So you have many ways that you can introduce it. You can use regular eggs and just beat it down into a consistency they can handle. You can use peanut butter and just make sure you liquefy it a little bit with a little bit of water, breast milk, or formula. Thick peanut butter can be a choking hazard, right? Which is why I like things like the peanut powder, because the peanut powder can be mixed easily into any puree or rolled into any baby-led weaning vegetable or fruit and given to your child. So the most common allergens in children are peanuts, tree nuts, milk, and shellfish. So I'm going to attach links and resources for the other foods that are allergenic foods, because there's top 9 allergens, but I want to go over those 4 things. So for milk, when your child is close to about 6 months of age, you can start to introduce yogurt. When you use the yogurt, you can also start to consider using other Lil Mixins as well. Now, with early introduction, you may have heard you have to give one food 3 days. That is also, in my opinion, outdated advice. What you want to focus on is maybe at every meal, focusing on one item. So maybe on yogurt, you're going to do for breakfast, and then for lunch, you can do something with peanut. Initially, you don't want to mix all of the foods in the same meal, but once you've introduced the food 3 to 4 times, you can start to mix. So just say day number 1, you do yogurt for breakfast with something else, and then you do a peanut butter and banana for a snack later in the day. That's fine. Once you've introduced each independently, then you can start to mix peanut butter powder in yogurt, but give it a few trials before you start to mix. But you don't need to wait the 3 days, right? When you start to wait 3 days, you can start to really miss out on all of the introduction of these foods. So only do that if your child's clinician says, I need you to wait 3 days because of X, Y, and Z. Otherwise, it's not necessary. In regards to shellfish, read the links below. You can make cakes that include shellfish in it, crab cakes, shrimp cakes, things like that allow the child to eat that from a young age when you start baby-led weaning. In regards to peanut, remember that you can use peanut butter, but the problem with peanut butter is that it's very thick and it can actually be a choking hazard because the baby is not able to bring that glob of peanut butter back. So if you're using peanut butter, it really needs to be a very, very, very small spread that's on a piece of bread or something else that you're using. So we use the peanut butter powder from Lil Mixins. So with this, it comes in individual packages. So I'll show this. So the individual packages is 1 serving. So the goal here is to use these 2 to 3 times a week. And on the back of the packaging, they have how you can use it. They actually have sample schedules, which is available on their website. So how we did this one is I have pureed banana here. So I looked at things, banana and peanut butter taste good together, in my opinion. So I would open it up and I would just put it into, I would put the whole thing, again, this is considered a serving. And I would just have, Lil Mixins has a box that has all of the different ones. So they have the 3 different powders and I would just rotate. So one meal I would give peanut butter, tree nut, egg, and I would just rotate around. So when you mix it, and again, you can add a little water if you need to. I haven't had this in a long time because right now Ryan's on full solid food. So you add it and you have a little bit of hint of the peanut butter taste, but it has about 2 grams per serving of the peanut protein. So if you do 2 to 3 servings a week, that's 6 grams of protein, which is what was done in the study. So again, the goal here is not calculating, well, how many grams are they getting, just being very consistent. So when you get something like the Lil Mixins packets, you can say, okay, let's rotate through. And there are different packages that have, if you want to do for the month, for the week, but just the idea is to rotate and be very consistent and persistent about the introduction. So that is with the peanut powder. You can also use the tree nut powder as well into different pureed vegetables, fruits, bananas, yogurt. So again, you can use those too. For the egg, we put the egg into the avocado. So this is the avocado, and you can add the egg into that as well. That was one combo that we really liked. Another idea is that you can use it for baby-led weaning. So just say you can give your child egg, but if you wanted to roll the vegetables or fruits in it, so that makes it easy for gripping too, for baby-led weaning. So you can put the egg powder and roll the avocado in it. So now it's going to be easier for the child to grab. This is bringing me back to when Ryan was when we started solid. So you can roll it. And these are bananas, so you can roll if you want to do it that way, or you can do puree. So there are a lot of options on how you can use the powders. I think these items are great to add more ways to be able to introduce the allergenic foods. Remember, you can do this. You can also include the foods that you normally eat. They just have to be in a consistency that baby can handle. Remember that if you're using real peanut butter, real almond butter, real other butters, that it's very thin spread, or that you liquefy it a little bit with some water or breast milk or formula. So we used Lil Mixins from 4.5 months to about 6.5 months for Ryan. It was nice because we really could just have the packets and just rotate it around and introduce it into the purees that he was eating. When we switched to baby-led weaning, we still would roll it, but by that point he was able to handle different textures. So we were able to use more peanut butter with confidence. We were able to use different things. He was able to grab a piece of egg a little bit better. So the powder is a great way to introduce these early allergenic foods, and the goal is to be persistent, be consistent with it, and just introduce the variety that is important for their body to understand that this is normal and not something foreign. You can find Lil Mixins at Target, Walmart, or online, and I'm going to be linking that to my show notes page, but it's something to consider. Remember that there are many ways to introduce allergenic foods, but the goal is to do it and do it early. Speak to your child's clinician, because if your child is high risk, they may ask you to introduce the allergenic foods as early as 4 months of age. If your child is not at high risk for food allergies, you can wait till the child is 6 months, 6.5 months, if that's when you start solids. But remember that the early introduction is better. Having a taste of peanut butter before the age of 6 months, starting to be more consistent with it, tree nut powder, egg powder, is really good to prevent the allergies. So that is why we recommend the early introduction. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode in honor of Food Allergy Awareness Week. I wanted to spread education and teach you all how you can introduce these foods from an early age. If you have any questions, ask them in the comment section, and I'll see you next time.